San Francisco was suffocating me. The city's pulse, its rainbow flags flapping on Market Street, the glitter-dusted couples laughing in Dolores Park, felt like a spotlight I wasn't ready to step into. At 19, I was supposed to have it figured out, right? Growing up here, where pride was practically a religion, you'd think I'd be out and proud by now. But every time I saw two guys kissing at a Castro bar or a drag queen owning the stage a mission party, my chest tightened. I envied their freedom, their certainty. Me? I was still hiding, dodging the truth I'd known since I was 15, when I couldn't stop staring at Lucas on the soccer team, his laugh lighting up the field like a flare. I told myself it was nothing, just a phase, but deep down I knew better. So when Kyle, my best friend since we were awkward 14-year-olds sneaking into dive bars, texted me about his dad's place on Lake Tahoe, I didn't hesitate. Pack light. Aiden, his message read, "Let's by the lake before college eats us alive." It was June, the summer before UC Santa Cruz would claim us both, and I needed an escape from the city, from the questions, from myself. Tahoe sounded like freedom. Turquoise water, pine-scented air, and a chance to breathe without the weight of who I might be. The drive up Highway 50 was a rush. Kyle's beat-up Jeep roared, windows down, blasting a playlist heavy with Troye Sivan and Charlie XCX. We belted out lyrics like we were headlining a pride float. The San Francisco fog fading in the rearview as pines and blue sky took over. Kyle, with his messy blonde hair and permanent grin, was in his element, drumming the steering wheel. "Dude, we're gonna live it up," he said, tossing me a Red Bull. "Dad's place is right on the water. Kayaks, beers, maybe even one of those queer beach parties Tahoe's got going on." I laughed, but my stomach twisted. Tahoe's queer-friendly vibe was no secret. Rainbow kayaks, drag brunches on paddleboards, parties where everyone was welcome. Part of me wanted to dive into that world, but another part wanted to run. "Sounds chill," I said, keeping my voice steady, my fingers fidgeting with the leather bracelet I'd worn since Kyle gave it to me after my first bad breakup. He was my safe space, the guy who'd hyped me up through every milestone, who never pushed when I clammed up about my feelings. If you notice my nerves now, he didn't let on. We pulled up to the cabin just as the sun hit its peak, the lake glittering like it was daring me to jump in. The place was sleek, glass walls, cedar deck, perched above the water with a view that screamed summer. I grabbed the cooler from the trunk, ice sloshing, and let my eyes wander. Across the lake, music thumped from a beach party, laughter and splashes carrying over the water. It felt alive, like the whole world was in on some secret I hadn't cracked yet. Then Jake stepped onto the deck, and my breath caught. "About time you two showed up." His voice was warm, deep, like a song you can't shake. Jake was 45, but he didn't look like anyone's dad. He wore faded board shorts and a loose tank, his dark hair tousled, a faint scar curving along his forearm for some old adventure he'd never mentioned. His aviators caught the lake's reflection, giving him a quiet intensity that hit me like a wave. I'd known him forever. Kyle's cool dad who'd blast Bowie or Tegan and Sarah and make us feel like we belonged. But today, something was different. Maybe it was the way he stood, relaxed but commanding, or the way his smile seemed to linger on me a beat too long. "Dad, you better not have drank all the IPAs," Kyle teased, hauling his backpack up the steps. Jake's laugh rolled out, easy and rich. "Save a couple for you, kid." He clapped Kyle's shoulder, then turned to me, his smile softening. "Good to see you, Aiden. It's been a minute." "Hey," I said, my voice catching as I hefted the cooler. My heart was doing this stupid flutter thing, and I blamed the altitude, the heat, anything but the way his eyes seemed to see right through me. "Yeah, good to be here. Get settled," Jake said, nodding toward the cabin. "Lake's waiting." Inside, the cabin smelled like cedar and sunscreen, all open windows and summer vibes. Co's already blasting music, tossing his stuff on the couch like he owned the place. I dropped my duffel in the guest room, staring out at the lake through the glass. It was gorgeous, too gorgeous, like it was mocking me for being such a mess. I thought about last summer, standing in the Castro during Pride, watching two guys dance under string lights, their hands tangled together. I'd wanted to be that sure, but I'd walked away, my drink warm in my hand, my heart stuck in my throat. Dude, you coming? Kyle called from the deck. Let's hit the water. I forced a grin, grabbing my towel. Yeah, let's do this. We spent the afternoon diving into the lake, the cold water a shock that made my teeth chatter. Kyle was all energy, splashing and racing me to a buoy, his laughter echoing across the water. Jake watched from the deck, a beer in hand, his presence like a low hum I couldn't ignore. Every so often, I caught him looking, not at Kyle, but at me. His gaze was steady, not pushy, but it sent a jolt through me, like he knew something I wasn't ready to admit. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in pinks and golds, Kyle started talking about Emma, his girlfriend in Truckee. She's slammed with some work thing, he said, floating on his back. Might need me to swing by tomorrow. You cool hanging here? Yeah, I'm good, I said, my voice casual, but my mind was racing. Alone with Jake? The thought made my pulse spike, and not just from the swim. Back at the cabin, we grilled burgers, the smell of charcoal mixing with the lake's crisp air. Kyle was in storyteller mode, rambling about his plans to save the oceans at UCSC, his hands waving like he was conducting an orchestra. Jake chimed in with stories from his own college days. Wild nights in the 90s, sneaking into clubs with fake IDs. His voice was low, warm, pulling me in despite myself. I tried to focus on my burger, on Kyle's jokes, but Jake's laugh kept cutting through, sharp and alive. After dinner, Kyle cranked the music, and we sprawled on the deck, the stars starting to peek through the twilight. Jake leaned against the railing, his silhouette sharp against the fading light. I was joking with Kyle about some dumb high school prank when I felt it, Jake's eyes on me. Not a glance, but a look steady and searching, like he was peeling back every layer I'd built to keep myself safe. My laugh faltered, my fingers tightening around my bracelet. The air felt heavier, charged, like the lake itself was holding its breath. You okay, man? Kyle asked, nudging me. Yeah, I lied, forcing a smile. Just zoned out. But I wasn't okay. That look from Jake, it wasn't just friendly. It was something else, something that made my heart race and my thoughts spiral. And as I met his gaze, just for a second, I realized I wasn't ready for what it might mean. The next few days at Lake Tahoe were a blur of summer perfection, the kind you'd see in a Troye Sivan music video, sun-soaked, reckless, alive. File, and I dove into the lake each morning, the water so cold it stole my breath, our laughter bouncing off the pines. Afternoons were for kayaking or sprawling on the deck, sipping IPAs while music pulsed from Kyle's speaker. Across the water, beach parties thumped with pop anthems, rainbow flags flapping from boats, a reminder of Tahoe's queer-friendly pulse. I wanted to join in, to lose myself in the crowd, but every time I thought about it, my chest tightened. I wasn't ready to be that free, not yet. Kyle was in his element, all easy grins and wild plans. We gotta hit one of those parties, man, he said one afternoon, tossing a frisbee my way. Emma says they're lit, drag queens on paddleboards, the whole deal. His girlfriend was stuck in Truckee, buried in some work project, but he talked about her like she was right there, his voice softening every time her name came up. Kyle was my anchor, the guy who'd sat with me through my first heartbreak, who'd dragged me to queer bars in the Castro when I was too shy to go alone. He never pushed me to talk about the stuff I kept buried, but sometimes I wished he would. Maybe then I'd have to face it. Jake was always there, a quiet force that drew my eyes no matter how hard I tried to look away. He'd grill burgers on the deck, his faded tattoo flexing as he flipped them, or tell stories about his 90s college days, his voice low and warm, like it was just for me. I told myself it was nothing. That spark in my chest when he laughed, the way my skin prickled when he passed me a drink, his fingers brushing mine for a split second. It was just a crush, a stupid, fleeting thing I'd shake off by the end of the week. But that look he'd given me the first night, steady and searching, kept replaying in my head like a song stuck on loop. Then Emma called, and everything shifted. Yo, Aiden, I gotta bounce, Kyle said. Phone pressed his ear as he grabbed his keys. Emma's freaking out about some deadline. I'll be back by dinner, cool? He was already halfway to the Jeep, his backpack slung over one shoulder. Go save the day, I said, forcing a grin from the deck where I was toweling off after a swim. My heart was doing that flutter thing again, and I hated it. Alone with Jake? The thought made my pulse race, a mix of dread and something I couldn't name. Kyle laughed, oblivious. Don't burn the place down, man. Dad's around if you need him. The Jeep's engine roared, gravel crunching as he peeled out, leaving a quiet that felt too loud. The lake lapped gently, a pop beat drifting from a distant boat, but the air was heavy, like it was waiting for something to break. I wandered to the deck's edge, the sun warm on my skin, my towel slung around my neck. Jake was leaning against the railing, a beer in hand, his aviators pushed up into his dark hair. He looked relaxed, but there was a tension in his shoulders, like he was holding something back. "Water's nice today, huh?" he said, his voice low, almost teasing. His eyes flicked over me, not pushy but sharp, like he could read every thought I was trying to hide. "Yeah," I said, rubbing the back of my neck, my bracelet catching the light. "Feels like a dream out here." He took a slow sip of his beer, his gaze lingering. "Kyle ditch you already?" "No, he'll be back," I said, shrugging. "I'm fine with the quiet." Jake nodded, setting his beer down with a soft clink. "Sound is fired up if you want to relax. Best way to unwind after a swim." His tone was casual, but there was something in it, a question, a pull I couldn't ignore. The sauna. I'd seen it behind the boathouse, a cedar hideaway Jake treated like a sanctuary. It wasn't my thing, but the idea of sinking into the heat, letting it burn away the mess in my head, sounded like escape. "Yeah, sound good," I said, grabbing my towel, my voice steadier than I felt. The path to the boathouse crunched under my sneakers, the pines casting long shadows. The sauna cedar exterior blended into the trees, like a secret waiting to be found. Jake was already there, adjusting the controls, his back to me. The way his shoulders moved, strong, deliberate, sent a spark through me that I tried to snuff out. He turned, catching my eye with a half smile that felt too knowing. "All set," he said, his voice warm, like a melody you can't forget. "Hop in." I stepped inside, the air thick with cedar and heat, already wrapping around me like a second skin. I settled on the bench, my towel loose around my waist, trying to focus on the warmth, the steam, anything but the thud of my heart. My thoughts were a mess. Jake's laugh, his score, the way he'd looked at me that first night. I closed my eyes, willing the heat to melt it all away, but it only made it worse. The door creaked open, and my eyes snapped wide. Jake stepped in, a towel slung low on his hips, his skin already glistening in the dim light. "Mind if I join?" he asked, his tone light, but his eyes held something heavier, like he was testing the water. My throat tightened, the room suddenly too small, the air too thick. "Sure," I said, shifting to make space, my voice betraying the nerves I was trying to bury. He sat across from me, leaning back, his posture relaxed but his gaze sharp, like he was reading me. The silence stretched, broken only by the hiss of steam as he poured water onto the rocks. The heat surged, pressing against my skin, and I wiped sweat from my brow, feeling exposed in a way that wasn't just the temperature. "You're wound tight," Jake said after a moment, his voice steady, like he was coaxing something out of me. "This place is supposed to fix that." "I'm good," I lied, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. His eyes stayed on me, not aggressive but heavy, like they were peeling back every wall I'd built. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his towel shifting slightly. "You sure? You seem distracted." His voice was softer now, almost intimate. It sent a shiver through me despite the heat. "Just, it's hot in here," I mumbled, staring at the wooden slats, avoiding his gaze. But I felt him, his presence, filling the space like gravity I couldn't fight. My mind flashed to last summer, standing in the Castro, watching two guys kiss under a rainbow banner, their hands tangled, free in a way I couldn't imagine. I wanted that, but this was something else, something dangerous. Jake didn't push, just watched me, his eyes steady, waiting. The silence was unbearable, the heat pressing down, my thoughts spiraling. I stood abruptly, my towel slipping as I grabbed it. I need air," I said, my voice shaky, my chest tight. He didn't move, just nodded, his expression unreadable, but his eyes still locked on mine. "Take your time, Aiden," he said, his voice low, carrying a weight that made my stomach flip. I stumbled out into the evening air, the lake shimmering under the fading sun. The cool breeze a shock against my flushed skin. My heart was racing, my thoughts a jumbled mess. What was that? The way Jake's voice wrapped around me, the way his eyes seemed to know me. It wasn't just in my head. Something was happening, something I wasn't ready for. It scared the hell out of me. The morning after the sauna, I woke to the smell of coffee and Kyle's playlist blasting through the cabin. Sunlight streamed through the glass walls, the lake glittering like it was taunting me with its calm. My head was a mess, replaying Jake's voice, his eyes, the way the heat had pressed against my skin like a secret I couldn't outrun. I'd barely slept, my dreams a jumble of cedar and sweat, of a look that felt too real. I pulled on a hoodie, my bracelet catching on the sleeve, and tried to act normal. Normal. Like I hadn't almost lost it in front of Kyle's dad. Kyle was at the stove, flipping pancakes, his blonde hair a mess. Yo, Aiden, you want blueberries? He called, grinning like nothing in the world could touch him. He was the same Kyle who'd stayed up with me after my first crush ghosted me. The guy who'd slipped me that leather bracelet when I was falling apart. His easy laugh was a lifeline, but today it felt like a weight. How could I face him when my thoughts were tangled up in his dad? Sure, I said, forcing a smile, grabbing a mug to avoid Jake's gaze. He was at the counter, sipping coffee, his dark hair still damp from a swim. He wore a faded t-shirt, the scar on his forearm catching the light, and his presence was like a low hum I couldn't tune out. Morning, he said, his voice steady, but his eyes flicked to me, soft and searching, making my stomach flip. Morning, I mumbled, busying myself with the coffee pot. Kyle rambled about a hike he wanted to do, some trail with epic lake views, but I barely heard him. Every time Jake moved, reaching for a plate, brushing past me to grab a spatula, I felt it, that pull like a current dragging me under. I kept my eyes on my pancakes, nodding at Kyle's jokes, but my mind was stuck on the sauna, on the way Jake's voice had wrapped around my name. After breakfast, Kyle dragged me to the lake, the cold water a shock that didn't clear my head. We raced to a buoy, splashing like we were kids again, but even Kyle's laughter couldn't drown out my thoughts. Jake was back at the cabin, probably reading on the deck, but his shadow lingered. I floated on my back, the sun warm on my face, trying to shove it all down, the spark, the fear, the want. But it was no use. Something had shifted, and I couldn't unseal it. Dude, you're quiet, Kyle said, treading water beside me. You good? It just tired, I lied, my heart twisting. How could I tell him? How could I explain something I didn't even understand? City boy soft, he teased, splashing me. Let's head back. I am starving. We trudged to the cabin, towels over our shoulders, gravel crunching underfoot. Jake was on the deck, a book in hand, but his eyes on the lake. He looked up as we approached, his smile easy but tinged with something deeper. Good swim? He asked, his gaze lingering on me just long enough to make my pulse spike. Epic, Kyle said, dropping into a chair. Aiden's slow as hell, though. Rude. I shot back, forcing a laugh, but my eyes caught Jake's, and the air felt charged like a storm was brewing. I needed to get away, to clear my head before I did something stupid. I want to walk for a bit, I said, grabbing my sneakers. Don't get lost, Kyle called, already scrolling his phone. The forest behind the cabin swallowed me up, pines casting long shadows across the dirt path. The air was cool, scented with earth and resin, but it did nothing to calm the chaos in my head. I sank onto a fallen log, my hands in my hair, the quiet broken only by a loon's distant call. Last summer, I'd gone to Pride in the Mission with friends. The streets were alive, glitter, music, people dancing like the world couldn't touch them. I'd stood there, watching two guys kiss under a rainbow banner, their smiles so sure it hurt. I'd wanted that freedom, but I'd walked away, my heart pounding, too scared to step into the light. And now Jake was forcing me to face it. He wasn't just Kyle's dad anymore. He was the guy who made my pulse race, who saw through every wall I'd built. At 45, he was supposed to be safe, familiar. Not this. Not someone who made me question everything. I thought about Lucas from high school, the way his laugh had lit up the soccer field, the way I'd buried that crush under excuses. But this was different. Jake wasn't a fleeting fantasy. He was real, and that terrified me. The sun was dipping lower, painting the sky in pinks and golds. I couldn't hide out here forever. I stood, brushing dirt off my shorts, my heart pounding as I headed back. The cabin glowed in the twilight, its windows catching the last light. Jake was still on the deck, a beer in hand, his silhouette sharp against the lake. He turned as I approached, his eyes locking onto mine, and the air thickened, like the world was waiting. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft, careful, like he was stepping on a thin ice. He set his beer down, the clink sharp in the quiet. I nodded, my throat tight. Just needed air. My hands clenched at my sides, my thoughts a whirlwind. He was so close, close enough to smell the faint cedar on his skin, to see the tension in his jaw. He tilted his head, studying me, and his voice was low, coaxing, like he knew I was teetering on an edge. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Fear and want collided, drowning out reason. "This is too much." Jake stepped closer, his eyes steady but softer now, like he was letting me see something real. "I get it in. It's a lot." His voice cracked, just enough to show he wasn't as sure as he seemed. It had broke something in me. Before I could think, I closed the gap, my lips brushing his in a kiss that was soft, desperate, like a question I didn't know how to ask. His hand came up, cupping my face, his touch gentle but firm, grounding me. The kiss deepened, warm and electric, every fear melting into something alive. I felt it, freedom, for the first time, like I was finally breathing. Then gravel crunched. Headlights cut through the twilight as Kyle's Jeep pulled in. I jerked back, my heart slamming against my ribs, panic flooding me. Jake's hand dropped, his eyes still on mine, unreadable but heavy. "We'll talk," he said, low and firm, like a promise. I nodded, my breath shaky, slipping inside the cabin as Kyle's voice rang out. "Yo, I'm back," he called, oblivious, a grocery bag in hand. My mind was spinning, the taste of Jake's lips still on mine, the weight of what I'd done crashing down. One kiss, everything's on the line. The cabin felt like a pressure cooker after that kiss. Every creak of the floorboards, every laugh from Kyle, made my chest tighten, like I was waiting for the world to crack open. The taste of Jake's lips lingered, a secret I couldn't shake, and his promise, "We'll talk," hung in the air like a storm cloud. I sprawled on the couch, pretending to watch Kyle scroll through his phone, but my eyes kept drifting to Jake. He was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for tacos, his movement steady, but the way he rubbed his neck, a nervous tick I'd never noticed before, betrayed him. He was as rattled as I was. "Yo, Aiden, you're spacing out again," Kyle said, tossing a couch pillow at me. His grin was wide, but his eyes narrowed, like he was trying to figure me out. "What's up with you, man? You've been weird since yesterday." "Nothing," I said too quickly, my heart lurching. I forced a laugh, tugging at my bracelet. "Just, lake vibes. Chilling too hard." He raised an eyebrow, unconvinced, but let it slide. "Whatever, dude. You're eating these tacos, though. Emma's recipe, spicy as hell." He launched into a story about her, something about a work crisis in Truckee, but I could barely focus. My mind was stuck on the deck, on Jake's hand against my face, on the way I'd felt free for one fleeting moment before Kyle's headlights ripped it away. Jake set a plate of tacos on the table, his eyes catching mine for a split second, soft, searching, but guarded. "Dig in, boys," he said, his voice steady, but I caught the tension in his jaw. He sat across from me, his knee brushing mine under the table, accidental but electric. I jerked back, my fork clattering, and Kyle shot me a look. "Chill, man," he said, laughing. "You're jumpier than a cat in a thunderstorm." "Sorry," I mumbled, shoving a taco in my mouth to avoid talking. The spice burned, but it was nothing compared to the heat in my chest. Jake was quiet, letting Kyle carry the conversation, but every so often, our eyes met, a silent current passing between us. It was like we were speaking a language no one else could hear, and it scared me as much as it thrilled me. After dinner, Kyle suggested a movie, some action flick with explosions and bad one-liners. I agreed, desperate for a distraction. We sprawled on the couch, Jake in an armchair across from us, his book open but unread. The screen went up, but I barely registered it, too aware of Jake's presence. The way his fingers tapped the armrest. Restless, Cal got up halfway through to grab snacks, pausing the movie on a frozen car chase. "Be right back," he said, disappearing into the kitchen. The room fell silent, the hum of the ceiling fan loud in my ears. I stared at the screen, my hands clenched in my lap, but I felt Jake's eyes on me. I glanced over, and there he was, watching me, his expression soft but heavy, like he was carrying the same weight I was. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Yeah," I said, too fast, my throat tight. "Why wouldn't I be?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his book forgotten. "You don't have to pretend with me, Aiden." His voice was gentle, but there was an edge to it, like he was holding something back. "Last night, it meant something." "I know it did." My breath caught, his words hitting like a punch. I wanted to deny it, to say it was a mistake, but the truth was clawing its way out. "It's not that simple," I said, my voice shaking. "You're Kyle's dad. It could ruin everything." He nodded, his jaw tight, and for the first time, I saw a crack in his confidence. "I know," he said, quieter now. "I've been telling myself the same thing, but I can't stop thinking about you." His eyes met mine, raw, unguarded, and my heart skipped. I don't want to hurt Kyle, but I don't want to pretend this isn't real, either. Before I could respond, Kyle's footsteps echoed from a kitchen. Jake leaned back, his expression neutral, but his eyes stayed on me, like a promise he wasn't ready to break. Kyle flopped onto the couch, tossing a bag of chips between us. "Unpause it, man," he said, oblivious. I hit play, the movie's noise filling the room, but my mind was miles away. That night, I lay in bed, moonlight spilling across the floor, the lake's gentle waves of faint hum outside. My thoughts were a mess. Jake's words, his touch, the fear of what Kyle would think if he knew. I thought about a friend from high school, Sam, who'd come out senior year. He'd stood in front of our English class, reading a poem about loving someone he couldn't have, his voice shaking but sure. Afterward, he told me how it felt, like shedding a skin he'd outgrown. I'd envied him, his courage, his clarity. But this was messy, eh? Jake wasn't just some guy. He was part of Kyle's world, my world, and crossing that line felt like betraying the one person who'd Zava been there. I rolled onto my side, staring at the lake through the window. It was calm, reflecting the stars like a mirror, but I felt like I was drowning. I thought about the stories I'd heard of Pride last summer, whispered in bars or shouted on floats. People who'd found love in impossible places, who'd risked everything to be themselves. There was this one guy, a friend, who'd fallen for his mentor in college. Everyone said it was doomed, but they made it work, quietly, away from the noise. Could that be us? Or was I kidding myself, chasing something that would burn us all down? The next morning, Kyle was up early, blasting his usual playlist, Charlie XCX, Troye Sivan, the soundtrack of our summer. I shuffled into the kitchen, my head heavy from sleeplessness. Jake was at the counter, pouring coffee, his t-shirt clinging to his shoulders. He glanced at me, his eyes softer than yesterday, like he was waiting for me to decide what came next. "Morning, sunshine," Kyle said, tossing me a bagel. "You look like you got hit by a truck. What's up with you?" "Nothing," I said, my voice flat, avoiding Jake's gaze. But Kyle wasn't letting it go this time. He leaned against the counter, his grin fading, his eyes sharp. "For real, Aiden, you've been off this whole trip. What's going on? You got a secret crush or something?" He laughed, but there was an edge to it, like he was fishing for something. My heart stopped, my fingers tightening around my mug. Jake froze, his coffee pot hovering mid-pour, and for a second, the room felt like it was closing in. I forced a laugh, my throat dry. "No, man, just tired. Long week." Kyle studied me, his eyes narrowing, and I realized he wasn't buying it. The air was thick, the lake outside too quiet, and I wondered if he could hear my heart pounding. Had he seen something? Did he know? Sunlight burned through the cabin's windows, the lake outside glittering like a mirror to my secrets. Kyle's words from breakfast, "You got a secret crush?" cut deeper than he knew, his eyes too sharp, too close to the truth. I sat on the deck, twisting my bracelet, The one Kyle gave me when I was a wreck over some guy who ghosted me. He was my rock, the friend who dragged me to Castro bars, never pushing when I dodged my feelings. Now, I was lying to him, the kiss with Jake a live wire in my chest. Kyle sprawled nearby, his phone blasting Troye Sivan, but his vibe was off. Aiden, for real, he said, tossing his phone down. You're acting weird. What's up? His voice was low, no grin, just a stare that pinned me. My heart slammed against my ribs. Nothing, man. I lie, my voice thin. I glanced at Jake in the kitchen, his shoulders tense as he chopped fruit, pretending not to listen. His nervous tick, rubbing his neck, betrayed him. He was as scared as me. Kyle leaned closer, eyes narrowing. You're hiding something. If it's a guy, just say it. I'm not an asshole. His words were soft, but they hit like a gut punch. He didn't know the guy was his dad. I froze, my throat tight. Jake's mug clinked against the counter, too loud in the quiet. Kyle, he's up, he said, his voice calm but strained. Let him breathe. Kyle's gaze flicked between us, suspicion sparking. What? You know something I don't, Dad? His tone was half joking, but it stung. I bolted for the forest, pines swallowing me as I sank onto a log, my head in my hands. The kiss, Jake's lips, his hand on my face, played on loop. I thought of Sam, my high school friend, who'd come out with a poem that shook our class. His courage a light I couldn't reach. At Pride last summer, I'd watched couples dance, free and fearless, and envied them. Now, Jake was my chance to be that brave, but at what cost? Footsteps crunched. Jake stood there, hands in pockets, eyes raw. Kyle's close to figuring it out, he said, voice low. I don't want to hurt him, but I can't pretend I don't feel this. His honesty broke me, his fear matching mine. What do we do? I whispered, trembling. I can't lose him.